So, hello and welcome to Amplifying Her Voice and Moms We Trust Mother's Day Summit. This session is The Balancing Act: How to Successfully Balance Being a Mom, Having a Career, and Everything Else Life Throws Your Way. I'm Dorothy Kolb, and I'll be your moderator. And we hope that over the next hour, you'll hear how we have attempted to make balancing this work and grab some advice on how you can make it work too. We have several very impressive women on this panel who offer their experiences and some takeaways that hopefully you can take advantage of. I will start with introductions. I'm, again, Dorothy Kolb. I'm first and foremost a single mom of 4 teenage sons. After a career in corporate entertainment, I am now an entrepreneur, and I have a firm that offers small business and accounting strategy to creative and social impact firms. And today with me are Trisha Sportsman. I'll introduce everyone's professional background, and then they can talk about their personal background. Trisha is an executive people leader with over 17 years experience in human resources. She currently serves as VP People and Culture for ISN Integrated Supply Network and spent much of her career in Fortune 100 global companies. Trisha graduated from Western Illinois University with a master's in organizational communication. She currently serves on the board of trustees for the Ronald McDonald House Charities of Tampa Bay and is a volunteer mentor with Take Stock in Children. Chelsea Stevenson is the professional henna artist and business strategist and powerhouse behind Hennapreneur, with a focus on sustainability through strategic and executive action. She brings passion and intensity to her role as an artist, educator, and mentor to creative entrepreneurs. She is the owner of the most celebrated henna boutique in Baltimore, Maryland, and supports artists around the world through her online platform. And Sandra Francisco is the founder of Idea to Profit. She helps new and aspiring entrepreneurs start a business from scratch, develop self-awareness, and transition from job to business so they can have financial freedom on their own terms. So let's just start with our panelists telling us a little bit about their mom journey. Chelsea, do you want to start?
Sure, why not? Thank you. So hello, everyone. My name is Chelsea Stevenson, and I am a mom of 3. So I'm a homeschooling mom, like pre-COVID homeschooling mom. So I'm one of those people. And I have an 11-year-old son, and then I have 2 daughters who are ages 4 and 6. Yeah, I'm just trying to figure it out like everyone else. I was appalled to discover that motherhood did not come along with a manual, much less one for every child. So I'm enjoying this journey and excited to share with you guys today.
How about Trisha?
Great. Thank you, Dorothy. I have 2 littles. I have a boy that's 9 and a daughter that's almost 7 later this month. So I'm in the midst of planning a birthday party for her. So, they always keep us really busy. And, my journeyhood as far as being a mom started off in Chicago. We moved when my son was about 3 months, and we kind of moved a few more times after that. So my kids have had that experience of living in one place, and then mom's job takes us somewhere else. So we up and move, although Tampa Bay's been our home for quite a while, for the last several years, which has been great for them. But, for them, it's interesting just, our interactions and their view of work. A quick story, they were looking at houses couple weeks ago with my in-laws and just talking about how they're going to save up and get jobs. And for me, being a working mom and being in the corporate environment, to see both of my kids recognize that at some point they're going to have to get jobs and kind of have that aspiration to work towards something for themselves gives me a lot of, just joy that I've been able to impart that insight with them and encourage them that, whatever you want in life, you just have to work for it. And that's what they're working towards right now together. So excited to be here and have this conversation with all of the women on the panel. Oh, Dorothy, you're on mute.
I know you'd think like 14 months or whatever is this, right? Okay, Sandra, how about you?
Yeah, I have. So my kids are older. They're 13 and 15. And I actually left corporate when they were very little, 11 years ago. So they've only really known me to work from home. And so I think that's kind of what they think people do. And my kids have been home. I was going to say after COVID, not before COVID, they went to school. But now, yes, they are home all the time. So that has been the interesting world of even trying to manage like their online learning and then, managing the internet and when I'm live and making sure they're not. And it's just, that's been a whole new world this last year.
Yeah, it sure has. It makes us have a lot more appreciation for women like Chelsea who do this all the time.
Yes.
And then just briefly, I have twins who are 19. I have a 16-year-old and a 14-year-old. So this whole COVID thing has not been as traumatic as it could have been if they were a lot smaller. So I'm lucky for that part. But to speak to Trisha's point about them, having goals, mine, they don't have their sights necessarily set on corporate America because they've seen my entrepreneurial side. And I've only been doing this for about 4 or 5 years now. So they've seen both sides of it. And I think they're realizing that the entrepreneur side might be something that offers a little more flexibility. I don't think they quite understand the stress that goes along with that, but they'll learn. So the first topic I wanted to start with today was discussing balance and if it's realistic. And when we were talking about this among ourselves last week, Chelsea had brought up this really interesting point of it being really more about harmony and less about balance. So I was hoping that Chelsea, maybe you could start off our conversation on that, on how you see the difference between those two.
Absolutely. So my experience is such that with my children, I started my business when my eldest was 1 year old. So as far as all three of them are concerned, honestly, I've always been a work from home person. And today that looks a little bit different from how it was back then. Today I own a brick and mortar henna boutique. So I see clients there. And then also I have the online brand where I'm servicing, people around the globe. And oftentimes I'll hear from my students or from clients, like consulting clients and the like, how is it that you're able to manage all of these things? How is it that you have your time split between servicing people in person at the boutique and then you've got these, these online students, and you also are doing homeschooling and you've got, you're managing your household. How do you do it all? How do you balance it all? And I always say there's no balance involved here. Like there is literally no balance involved here. And if I were to set a standard for myself, that balance were what I was striving to strike, I would constantly strike out and I would constantly be disappointed. And what sort of story would that create for me about my own capacity and my ability to show up really with excellence, right? In all of these different arenas of my life. And so instead of leading with this desire for work-life balance, I instead have reframed it for myself as the want for work-life harmony. And so what that means is that, my work with my clients or my work with my students or my work here at home, the relationships that I have with my children or with my spouse or whatever, all of those things play in a shared space. I can't compartmentalize my time, my emotions, my energy. That's just simply not how it works. Like even for today, for this panel, my children are here, they're present, they're in the other room. Like they are a part of what life looks like for me. And I'm very unapologetic about that. And so for me, finding harmony has everything to do with how can my goals in one arena of my life also support what's happening in another, or how can a challenge that's felt in one arena of my life perhaps be met with more ease by adjusting something somewhere else, and really by taking ownership of my own autonomy and the decisions that I make both inside of my business and inside of my home life. That's really empowering. And so instead of saying, well, things have to be even and things have to be balanced and they have to be 50-50 or 25-25-25-25, whatever, I don't have to do that. I can just instead allow myself to be flexible and allow for those things to work in a more harmonious way that gives me space also to show up as a more full version of myself in every situation that I'm met with throughout the course of the day.
I love that. That is so, when you said that the harmony last week when we were talking, I was like, wow, that really gives you the freedom to kind of feel like you can do it all because you're not compromising one for the other and robbing Peter to pay Paul. Trisha, Sandra, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah,
I
so
mean, I
mine's a little bit
completely
different.
agree.
Oops, I'm so sorry. I should have said one person.
All right. Mine's a little bit different. I do feel like it's more of an ebb and flow between, sometimes it's heavier on the family or personal side, and I have those commitments. And there's other times, if there's work travel or just heavy commitments, that gets prioritized. So for me, I think it's those priorities shift. Whether it's week to week or day to day or month to month. What's been important for me throughout my corporate career is creating those boundaries and being able. I think you said, Chelsea, something about kind of taking control and having controlling that. And I think for me, when I think about boundaries, it did take me a little while to build up to that, to grow in my role and grow in my confidence and my abilities to have put a more stake in the ground when it came to family commitments or kids, or I need to leave today at this time. But what you described, Chelsea, as this harmony, I think for me, working remote in the last year fully has created more of that, just this intertwined life where on my lunch, I'm doing some of those things. And maybe it's at 2:00, I get that call from the doctor that I take because my life just feels more intertwined now than it did before. Now, I'm not going to stay remote forever. So it'll be interesting when I go back into an office setting, although I'm going to have some flexibility. I'm so used to trying to make doctor's calls after 5 and no doctor answers after 5, but it's been great for me to have a little bit more of that harmony that you've described in the last year. And I think it's made me even that much more productive and flexible from a work standpoint. And then it allows me to support my kids and family when they really need me to.
Sandra?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you guys have said. And I think Chelsea and I have a lot in common because when she was talking, I'm like, ditto. That's how I see it when it comes to harmony as well. Because I think if you try to go for balance, which if you look at a scale, balance is actually at 0. So there's like nothing actually happening at balance, which is then you have equilibrium, which you're not really living. Like life is just up and down and sideways, right? And it's messy being a human being. So I think not having that expectation, which I will say when I was in corporate, I don't know if it's the culture, but I felt like I had more of a expectation to have some kind of balance. Like if I'm going to be at work, like crazy hours that I used to work, then on weekends, I have to not work and I have to make up the time. And there was almost more culturally ingrained for it to be like some sort of balance. But I found that really weighed on me. That created a lot of stress and it made it very difficult to do that. Where harmony is like every day is different. Every day is different. Some days are going to be more kid friendly where there's going to be more time for kids, and some days and some weeks and some months are going to be so focused in on a business. But I think it just comes down to that permission that it's okay for it to flow.
Yeah, I agree. I having left corporate after like 20 years and only doing this for the last 4 or 5, my kids started off with me, leaving the house at 7:30 in the morning, getting home at 7:30 or 8:00 at night, and constantly feeling, like we all do, like if you concentrate too much on work, then you feel guilty about your kids. And if you concentrate too much on your kids, then you feel guilty that you're not performing at work. And I wonder if the balance thing comes more into it, like, Trisha is coming from a corporate background. Maybe the balance comes into it more when you are in corporate than when you're in, a self-employed entrepreneur or something like that, where you can kind of make your own rules. And I think maybe, it's more accepted that, you're making your own rules. I'm not sure, but I know that in the last, COVID year that we've had, it's become a lot more acceptable to have this intertwined thing. And I'm kind of hoping that, even in corporate America or corporate world, we're allowed to still have that, the
And
people that
Dorothy,
go
I
back to
think,
work do that.
yeah, I think leaders have to cultivate that though. And that's one thing. So I had a new mom on my team last year. She was a mom of twins. And, I don't have twins. And I know I for a reason I don't have twins, right? I mean, that's what takes a lot in and of itself. But, being a mom and having smaller kids, they're not small, babies now, but recalling how I felt trying to grow my career and feeling that pressure that I wanted to show up for work no matter what, I extended that to her. And I think we need leaders, not only females or moms, but leaders in general, men included, to really encourage that, if you need to step away because whatever is happening, you just don't want people to feel that they're doing something wrong or they're not fulfilling their job. Because I will tell you, when I allow my team and encourage them to do what they need to from a family perspective, it gives them some sense of calm, and they know I'm confident in them that they're going to get the job done. If they have to jump online later, great, no problem. If you have to, but we need more leaders, I think, to really encourage that and to support that wholeheartedly, not just saying it, but to really encourage people, especially in a corporate environment, that it's okay. I trust you to do your job and I know you'll get it done.
I think that the same exists inside of the entrepreneurial space. Like for myself, I'm recalling at the end of last year, my kids, my two eldest, were playing soccer, and my son had been playing soccer for a number of years. But my daughter, the middle one, was playing her first season, and I was devastated at the end of her season to realize that, I'd missed all of the practices. I was at the Henna Boutique. I missed all of the practices. I attended one game. And I remember her coming to me with her trophy and her medal. And I didn't even realize that it was the last game of the season. And it broke my heart to know that I had missed all of that. And so I sat with that for a while, and I thought to myself, okay, I'm so invested in building this legacy, and the legacy that I'm building through my businesses is 100% for them. I want, I want to be able to pass on this generational wealth, and I want them to see all the things that mom is building. And like all of that is so important to and dear to my heart. But what's the point, right? What's the point of creating all of those things, or even being successful and from an economic perspective that, such that I can afford them these opportunities to play in extracurriculars, right? Like they're also not cheap. So, to have that ability, that's great. But at what cost? How much does it matter if she looks to the sidelines and she never sees mom there? And so for me, there was like this new reckoning, if you will, that I had to have within myself. And I had to really reassess and reevaluate where I stood as a business owner who on paper gets to make all of the decisions for their life and for their business. But also I was still kind of playing within the rules of society says you have to do this first, or you have to prioritize the work before you do the things at home. And so after kind of working through that, and it was very upsetting for me, I did a lot of journaling around it and whatnot. And then I decided, you know what? No, I have to, I have full capacity, right? To own my, to really own my like give myself permission and to own my own authority inside of my life and inside of my business to make the appropriate adjustments that will allow for me to have more harmony, that would allow for me also not to miss those moments like that. And so this season, all three of my kids are playing, which like between us, I would rather be anywhere but on the soccer field. But all three of my kids are playing and I'm not missing those things. What did that mean for me? It meant one, prioritizing what mattered, which was the memories that they have of mom being present, right? And so what did that mean for me also? That meant cutting back hours at the Henna Boutique, which also meant raising my rates, right? So, because I'm not going to take food off of the table in order to attend so where does that give? But I think for us, those of us who are inside of that entrepreneurial space, we shouldn't forget the fact that there's still definitely that pressure to perform. But can we, is there also space for us to, I'll use the word decolonize that experience in order to provide better life experiences as a whole for not only ourselves, but also our children?
Very well said. I agree.
I can just add a thought onto that.
Please.
When you talked about sports, and it could be music, it could be art, it could be any number of things, having small kids. And when I traveled a lot, especially pre-COVID, one of the things that I wanted to share this as a tip or technique that worked And I learned a little bit the hard way too of, you missed something that was important to them. And so what I did was I asked, particularly my son, he was older, my daughter's in and out of things, but I asked him, what's important for mommy to be at? And I think when you start involving your kids in that discussion and you communicate with them, you figure out what matters to them and where they want to see you. Now, I will say I was met with at all my practices, and I said, okay, well, what if we had to choose, again, engaging them that I will be there, but I want you to tell me what's the most important thing you're involved in. And then you try to work around that, like you said, because you're absolutely right. They are looking at the sidelines and they are looking to see your face. And it's super important to them.
Yeah, I found that there was a lot of I don't care. What do you want me to be at? Like I could only be at two things this week. What do you want me to be at? I don't care. And so it was a digging conversation. Okay, if I can do this or that, which one do you want me to be at? Because they also, I feel like sometimes don't want to, they feel your pressure too. And so they don't want to put more on it. Um, and so, yeah, that I found I was doing that kind of a thing where which pick one, and I've got four, so it was pick four. Well, very cool. Thank you. I appreciate that. Trisha, I wanted to, we've touched on a little bit about the entrepreneurial stuff. I wanted to have you talk a little bit about the impact of growing a career in corporate and being a mom at the same time. You kind of just got into that a tiny bit, so it might be a great time for that segue.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, from early on in my career, I always knew I wanted to continue to grow, continue to broaden my experiences, take on more responsibility. And I absolutely wanted to also have kids and be a mom. So it's always been this balance or harmony of, doing both of those. And it really, for me, I had during my second, when I had my second child, I was on maternity leave. And it was then that I was home with my son, who was 2.5 at the time. And I really got to experience him. And I will tell you, up until that point, he was daddy's boy. My situation, my husband actually stayed home with our kids when we did that first move. So he had a really close bond. And as a mom, it killed me to not have that closeness with him. So after that time home, it was actually over the summer, did a lot of play dates, met other moms for the first time. We had been living in that community for over 1.5 years, and I didn't know many moms except my neighbor. And so it gave me an opportunity to connect with other moms, both working, both stay at home, and to start building this network that would eventually, and we have no family here, they live in other states. So it really became this network that has enabled me to do what I want to do in my career. Part of it's that, part of it's good communication and working with my husband, our stay-at-home parent, on how I can still be really involved. But I had a lot of hard lessons that I learned along the way, even just the stress that I would have at work. And at a certain point, I decided that I was only going to take calls from my boss or if it was urgent on the way home, because I needed that time to decompress in the car. Because when I showed up to the dinner table with my family, there was moments that I didn't have a lot to say. I was just had so much in my head, so much I still wanted to do, so much I didn't get done. And that really impacted my family. So it was a couple of those awakenings for me that made me take those shifts and find techniques to help me personally decompress, navigate what I was experiencing. And I think we talked about it earlier, this time on the weekends, when I'm with my kids, I'm with my kids. And over time, that has really helped me to build those relationships that now, as they're a little bit older, when I have these work commitments, I can talk to them about it. And they fully know mommy's going to do this, but I engage them in that process. So it's been challenging. I think having people that I work with understand, my expectations around family, that I have to be there for certain things, but also giving them the reassurance that I'm not dropping anything at work. I'm just letting you know that I also have commitments. So I think being, owning that those roles that you have and not being afraid to share those expectations with the boss is really important. And then leveraging that network. So I have other moms, neighbors, friends that I can call on. So if I'm going to be late, if I'm stuck in traffic, if I need someone to help drop off or pick something up, I've built that network that I feel comfortable. And that's been essential in me being able to do some of the things that I want to be able to do career-wise, while also making sure that that family piece is taken care of in those pinches or, things that would ordinarily really stress me out. I know I've got someone that I can leverage to just help me get me through and help our family out. So it's been a learning. And I absolutely hope that, folks listening to this, either the replay or live, if your dream or your aspirations are to grow your career, I fully, wholeheartedly believe it's possible. But you have to involve others. You have to be open on your communications and set those expectations, not with just the boss, but with your family too, and stay connected and good communication.
That's great advice. How do you feel it would be would it be any different for someone earlier on in their career to have that kind of a conversation? You're a VP, you've got lots of experience behind you, you've demonstrated that, yeah, I'm going to get this job done. What about someone who's earlier on that maybe doesn't have that background of proof to their boss to say, look, I can handle both these things?
Yeah, it's tough. I don't want to sugarcoat anything because I definitely was in a tough position. But I think, aligning and being really clear on your work and trying to stay as focused as possible. There were times where I felt like I didn't say no to things because I wanted to be visible. I wanted to show up. I wanted to be seen. Even on Zoom, we've used so many Zoom and team calls these days. I see other women or moms or just folks that I know that are trying to grow their career, and I'll send them a message, say, hey, turn on your video. To me, that's still part of it is you need to have a presence. You need to be visible. You need to add value to whatever you're doing. So, I do think there's more aptitude or awareness around, it's not just working all the hours, but it's really about being effective while you're there. And if you can demonstrate and add that value. But I do think it's tougher when you're growing career because you are building credibility, you are building trust, you are trying to, at least in a corporate environment, prove yourself and get those stripes, so to speak. So it's absolutely more difficult and challenging. And that's what I was alluding to or speaking to earlier, where I feel like got that once I had some of that credibility, I felt more comfortable in giving myself that permission to create those boundaries. But what I would tell someone while you're more junior is you still can create those boundaries. I do think workplace environments are being cognizant that the world of work is changing and the expectations around being able to do both work and grow a family is becoming more real.
Great. Thank you. Shifting gears a little bit now that we're talking about all this work stuff. Sandra, I'm going to put you on the spot here and ask you, in putting yourself first, is that selfish? Is it self-saving? Should you do it? Should you not? And how?
Yeah, I mean, I think that as a societal belief, I think we still have a major belief that it is selfish, especially when you're a mom. If you're going to put your kids first, and then, there's that, do I put the business first or do I put my job first or the kids? And you're constantly trying to figure out what's right to do. And putting yourself at the very top of the list, often there's still a belief that there's something wrong with that. So for me, in my journey of growing and learning over the last 11 years, it's really been coming to a place of, I know that if I don't put myself first, if I'm not taking care of myself, I'm not at my best. So when I show up to my clients or when I show up to my kids, I'm going to be showing up in a position where I'm going to be compromised. I'm not going to be in an ability to really sit and listen to them, both clients and kids. I'm not going to be in a position where I can like not react right away and get angry or get frustrated because I'm just in my head, like with all a million thoughts. So for me, it's just based on experience and evidence that when I put myself first, meaning that I do take a break in between, like I'm done with my work day. I don't run out into my kids because it's like, okay, that's what I got to do. Like I'm done. So I've got to go now spend time with them. I always have a buffer in then, at least if it's 15 minutes, where I can do something for myself. Sometimes it's longer. And my kids know that. Sometimes they'll be like, are you done? And especially now that they're home, they'll be like, is your work day over? Are you done? Are you finished your calls? And they're like, can we hang out now? Can we do something? And I'm like, in an hour. Sometimes they'll be like, I need to go and take a bath first, or, I need to go do something first before then I can be present. Because I found through my own experience, when I put that pressure on myself to put myself last or put myself bottom of the list, then when I do go do the things I feel like I should do, I'm not fully present. So they're not getting the best of me either. So I would say, I think it's a belief. You've got to work through that belief. How much do you line up to it? And then how does it work for you? If it really works for you, if you have a great deal of benefit from knowing that you put your kids first, and then, then comes your job or then comes your business, and that works for you, then great, that works for you. But for me, in living my life and in my experience, it has changed my entire world to put myself first. So to me, it's not selfish because I've lived it and I know it's not. I know that my kids have a mom that like connects with them and asks them. And I say sorry a lot. There's times where I make a ton of mistakes. Like I will still get frustrated or do this or do that or, say something. And then I'll come back and say, well, today when that happened, I was wrong. And I know that if I had not worked on myself and put myself first, I would never be able to show up that way.
And you are Canadian, so saying sorry a lot is...
Yeah, kind of the thing.
And it's great. I think I might have to do that when we leave this tonight, to take the 15 minutes and just go. Sometimes that does involve a glass of wine, though. But Chelsea, what about you? Do you put yourself first? You've got 3 at home and you're homeschooling, and that's a lot.
Yes. No, I was like over here like doing this thing for Sandra. I'm like, I relate to that so much. And it's true. There is this societal expectation for us to show up and always to be secondary. We as mothers immediately become classified as secondary, like second class citizens, even within, the 4 walls of our own homes. And why does it have to be that way? Simply because we were, socialized to behave that way doesn't make it right. And it certainly doesn't make it effective. And so I have zero qualms letting anyone know that my kids are not first in my life. And I love them to pieces, right? Don't get me wrong, but they are not my primary priority at every waking moment of the day. I am a whole person. And part of honoring that is acknowledging that there are needs that I have, and those needs cannot be met by my children. Those needs must be met by me taking actions that are, in alignment with whatever it is that I'm requiring at that time. I can't lean on or depend on my children to fulfill me in those ways. And so for me, when I think about selfishness, and if someone were to write me off as being selfish for saying that, or being selfish for feeling that way or for behaving in that way, I'd say, okay, I'll wear the label. Please give me the scarlet A. I'm cool with that, because what I know to be true is that in me putting myself first, I'm modeling self-honoring behavior for my kids. And so if they don't see it anywhere else, I want them to see it with mom, right? They are looking at us all of the time, and they are assessing what we're doing, even if they're not saying that. And so if I am modeling that sort of behavior, then I feel really good about how I'm sending them out into the world, and how I'm preparing them to behave for themselves as well. I think about on the flip side, and this is a little bit, this is business strategist, I'm always thinking in strategy, right? So it's just how my brain works. But I'm even considering this from a strategic perspective, in that I want to make sure that relationship that I have with my kids way further down the line, right? When my are adults, I don't want my children to look back and say, I never knew my mom. What I knew was a shell of my mom. What I knew was what my mom put out there. I would so much rather them know that, yeah, they weren't first. Mom put herself first. And also, these were mom's passions. These were mom's values. These were mom's likes. These are the things that she disliked. These are the things that made her who she was. And for them to feel very confident about the fact that the love and the relationship that we have or had or whatever together was genuine, and that they were met at the table, at that relational table, by a whole person, not someone who was just there to like make them comfortable and happy. So that for me is the other piece. You know, it's not just about taking care of me right now, but I'm also thinking about the legacy that I'm leaving behind for my kids, and how they turn around and how they allow others to treat them, and how they look back on just what we've shared, you know, in their upbringing and so forth. It's so funny. Last night at dinner, the timing couldn't even, like, it's perfect. Last night at dinner, we'd sat down to eat, and we're right now in the month of Ramadan. So, you know, we're fasting all day. We sat down to eat. I was not cooking. I'm like, this is my boundary. I'm not cooking tonight. Like, we're going to order out. Okay. I'm tired. And so we ordered out, and, you know, my husband went out to pick up the food. When he arrived back at the house, like, we all sat down to eat, and we served, you know, the plates. My husband and I together served the plates for the kids and for ourselves. And so we sat down to eat. And of course, my husband and I are kind of like sitting down last, and we start to eat our meal. And the littlest one, finished her portion like prior to me, like even getting like halfway through my little plate too. And so she came over and she's like, can I, you know, I want to get some juice. Can I get some juice? And she's wanting me to get up and go get juice from the refrigerator. And I told her, like, I'm happy to give you the juice, but it's going to be a moment, like, let mommy finish first. And my husband went to get up and get the juice for her. And I said, no. Like, this is a lesson that we're teaching them, you know, just like they have every right to enjoy a warm, you know, a hot meal. So do we as their parents. And this is a lesson, you know, it's very small, but what does it teach? It's not about being selfish. It's about being self-honoring. And just like, you know, you require certain things, I also require certain things. So, you know, approach with caution, you know, and approach also with compassion towards that other person. And so my hope is like little things like that will compound in their character, and allow for them to also kind of erase that belief that's going to be put on them by the outside world, that these sorts of things are selfish. It's not selfish. It's self-honoring. And I think that if we could rewrite that narrative, that would be beautiful for everyone. So
100%. Well said. Trisha, you want to follow that? No, I'm just
Yeah,
kidding.
I know.
No.
Well, the thing that came to mind was, I think we have a trifecta on, you know, making sure we prioritize ourselves. I absolutely, you know, in order for me to feel like I'm my best self, I have to do something for myself. So, and I've had, and that's one of the things I think for me, I've always really taught myself is not to feel guilty, whether I have to go on that work trip or whether I have to, you know, want to do something for myself, whether it's going to dinner with a girlfriend or, you know, talking on the phone to my sister that lives in California. I need to fill up my cup too. And I've never been one to shy away from doing that, whether it's small, 5 minutes here, an hour, a weekend away, you know, even though you've got all the things going on, I wholeheartedly with both what Sandra and Chelsea said. I mean, we cannot continue to give, because I think that's when, you know, that's when the voice gets louder. And I just know I don't feel like I'm delivering and being the mom that I want to be. And I don't want them to see that. I want them, much like what you said, Chelsea, I want them to see that you've got to take time for yourself. I can't do all of these things if I don't pause and physically take care of myself. For us, you know, getting a dog about 1.5 years, 2 years ago has been great, because it's very easy for me to say, I'm taking the dog out on a walk and I've got my earbuds in. And for me, I do a lot of personal development. I love listening to podcasts, variety of different topics. I kind of miss my time in the car on that commute, because that's when I got a little bit of my self-development. So I'm having a little bit of a struggle trying to find that. But, you know, to go on a walk with the dog, I'm in nature, we're getting exercise, I'm getting personal development. For me, that is doing a lot. I feel like I just checked off a lot of boxes, but I feel like I took care of myself in the way that I have wanted to. And so it's 100% important. So hopefully we all have something planned for later today or 15 minutes. I love that, Sandra. I don't think I do 15 minutes right after work, but I might try it. So thanks for sharing that.
I know, really. I actually, I feel bad now because I feel like I'm coming from the opposite direction. Not that I am supporting the opposite. This is where I'm bad at this because, being a single parent, are like, there's like this built-in guilt, right? Of I've got to do it all. I've got to, one of the reasons that I'm not together with their father anymore is because I didn't want that behavior that he had modeled for my sons. But then it makes you feel like you have to step into both roles all the time, right? So it's actually, this putting myself first is something that I struggle with and I still struggle with today. I do take the dog for a walk, but I usually say that that's putting the dog first. Um, so maybe I'll have to bring my AirPods and start listening to podcasts then too, and double team that. But I do try to get the 15 to 30 minutes, maybe sometimes an hour between my home office and right out that door, which is the rest of the house, when I'm not starting dinner yet. I'm drinking a glass of wine or I'm just hanging out in my room or something. Don't bother me for, let me watch the People's Court or whatever I have to do to like make my brain not, but it is, something that I still struggle with. And my kids are, they're older. I've been struggling for a long time, but just in case anyone else is, watching or listening to this, it's okay for it to be, I think, something you have to work on for a long time. And I love that you guys are not. What?
Can I challenge that? Like even that language that you use? Yeah, because I'm like, wait, what are you saying? Like you're getting better at it. Like it's not to say like, oh, I'm bad at that. Like whenever I hear them, like, don't say that. You're not bad at it. You're improving on it, and it's fine. Like, yes, and like I resonate so hard with what you're saying, or rather, it resonates with me. I was raised by a single parent, and so my father, I'm the eldest of 7, and my dad was a single father. So I always saw that like. He was never taking time for himself. He was always in service to his children. They were like, there wasn't space for that. And logistically, I understand. I was a single parent for a number of years as well. And that was definitely my experience also. And what I feel like is, it's so long as there is an active intent, right? So long as there's an active intent to be self-honoring and to make those spaces, whatever that looks like, whether that's 5 minutes of something here, 10 minutes of something there, or the weekend away, like you're making progress and like honor that too. Yeah. Like honor that too. Give yourself some credit for it because it's so much harder said than done. Whether you have a partner in the picture or not.
I think it's about creating that habit. Right. I mean, it's something that you do over and over. Self-care is not once a month. I don't see it as once a month. I mean, it's got to be regular. We have to fill the cup, fill the tank. I have to refuel every single day in some form or fashion. Sometimes it's just a cup of coffee and sometimes it's journaling. I think whatever it is, it's just kind of building that habit around this is okay. I'm not taking away from something else because I'm actually making myself better so I can be better and show up better to work or for my kids or for my partner, whatever that looks like. Chelsea, you reminded me of something. My parents, my background culturally is very nurturing. And to me, I think that was a symbol growing up that I saw that my mom, my grandma is just all hands on deck 24/7. So it is different for me, I think, to make some different choices and to put myself first, where that's not really how I was brought up. So I think it keeps coming back to giving yourself permission to do these things. Like it's okay. And I think once you actually, for someone that doesn't or feels really guilty, I would really challenge you to try it for a week, try it for a month. I mean, plan to do some things for yourself. They don't have to be a weekend away, but you could just plan 10 minutes of meditation, 10 minutes of yoga, whatever it is. Start small, but see how you feel afterwards. I really think you'll feel the energy that I know few of us have here by doing it on a regular basis. Get more comfortable with it and you'll commit to it more often.
And your kids will get used to seeing you do it, I think, too.
Exactly.
Right?
Right. Right. Huge.
Well, that's another good segue for what about when we don't do this and we find ourselves short and we make mistakes with our kids? How do we handle that and communicate that? Chelsea, you had talked earlier about, say, oh, actually, I think it was Sandra maybe who said she's sorry. um, but how do you handle, when you make a mistake and communicating that to your children? And who wants to take that first?
Yeah, I mean, that is something that I do on a regular basis. And it's just, I don't know where it came from. I just felt like early on, they were probably like, 5 and 7 when it started to become a practice. And I think just from me growing up, that never happened, right? Like I never had my parents come to me and say, oh, we shouldn't have done this. And I've had to do a lot of like my own personal growth and development around things that I took personally and that I felt like, well, that happened, therefore I meant this about me. And then I've had to, work on that, where I just wanted to, I mean, the kids are going to have whatever imprints they're going to have, but I wanted to take a little bit of that off the table. So when, I am short with them, or when I say something that I don't mean, or I even tell them to do something like you should do it this way, or you have to do this or this. And then I sit with them and I'm like, I don't really believe that. Why did I just do that? And I'm like, I just did that because I felt like that's what was done to me. Therefore, that's how I should parent. So I will go back to them and I'll just say that. I'll just say, I don't even know sometimes why I just stepped up and said this to you or made you do this. And when I sit with it, I'm not in integrity here. I actually can't follow through with this because it's not my truth. But it was like immediately I felt like, oh, I have to do it this way. So once I have some time to think about it and process it, I will go and sit with them. And now, they're older, so we have even more detailed conversations around this. But I did start with them early. And sometimes it was very simple conversations, but I would just say, I was wrong. I said this or I did this, and that wasn't true for me. And what I wish I could have done was this. But in the moment, I had a reaction. So it's also not saying I'm a bad person. Oh, look at me, because I don't want them to get that impression either. It's just saying, I would have done something different if I had more time to think about it, if I didn't just react in that moment. But I reacted in that moment based on my upbringing or what I felt I should have done. And now, given some time, I actually believe this or feel this, and this is why. So we just have these open conversations. And I think Chelsea said she wants, your kids to know you. This is where I also build that relationship, that they know I'm not perfect, make mistakes a lot. I even tell them about the business mistakes. And I'll tell them what's going on in the business and that I probably would have been better off this way, but I went this way. And that brings them into the relationship where I do feel that they know a lot about me. And I think then as they get older, we're going to have a basis for a stronger relationship.
Yeah, I'll just chime in. I think this is where the self-care really becomes important, because I too have had those situations. I can go to 0 from 10. And then it's just like in that moment, you're like, oh, shouldn't have said that, shouldn't have reacted like that, shouldn't have done that. And sometimes for me, that's the the red flag going up of most of the times is go take the dog for a walk, or go do a workout just to release some of that stress. And that's where, it can you can really do some damage. And I love that you shared that apology, Sandra. And it's something that I don't remember growing up either hearing from my parents when I reflect back on situations where I probably went too far and they reacted. I don't recall that. And I think it takes a lot of courage. And, sometimes I have to bite my tongue and really absorb what it's not, I did it because I actually made a misstep, and it's not okay. So it does take, I think, owning that. But those are challenging situations. And I always think the thing for me that I think of is my actions now, fast forward 10, 15, 20 years, they're going to be the parent reflecting back on how they were raised and how we communicate to them. And that scares the heck out of me as a mom. And some of that personal development is parenting books. My gosh, there's so much out there today, but it really causes me to flex. And there's a book I recently read called The Art of Nurturing Boys. And it has helped me, having a child that is a boy, immensely, to recognize just the physiological and physical differences of how they interact, how they receive things, why my son can't sit still sometimes. It's helped me as a mom be able to recognize the differences in boys and girls, and to be able to manage some of that. So some of it's education on my own part. But like you said, when you fly off to recognize, for me, it's I need to take care of myself a little bit more. But having that honest conversation, I think it takes courage. But it shows them exactly what you said, which is who you are. And we're not perfect. I don't claim to be perfect, and I want them to see that, and I want them to know it's okay to say sorry and come back from something that you did. It's not the end of the world. Just acknowledge it and know better and do better.
I think my sons, they know when I overreact, they'll laugh. I know that's not respectful, but but they know when they're like, okay, and they'll know that I'll come back around. And I'll be like, all right, that was, you got me at a really bad moment. But we have a very open and communicative relationship. So I think when they know when I'm not going to say sorry for something, when I get really quiet. Like, quiet for me is far worse than loud. Loud is just me blowing off steam, but quiet is usually the big one. I
just have to add one thing with
Yeah.
littles, though. I don't know about you, Chelsea. Sometimes I'll ask my son, what happened before mommy yelled? Can we talk about that? What are the steps that led up to this? I didn't listen. It's, and you all know this, you have littles, and Dorothy, maybe it's the same as teenagers, but you ask things over and over and over, right? And I think the reality is it's challenging, being a mom with all this pressure that we're talking about, whether you have your own business or you're, working in a corporation. So we just want a little corporation. And, sometimes I have to just ask my kids for grace because I made a mistake, but I hope you listen next time. help mommy out a little bit. Let's work on this together, right? Meet me halfway.
Right. Chelsea, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, no, I think my experience is a little bit different. Like when I reflect on my upbringing, as I mentioned, I was the eldest of 7. So I had a very close, almost like working relationship with my dad. I was always like there and supportive, helping manage the things and whatnot. And so my dad was always very open with me. He always communicated with me very freely. And so I think part of this might have actually, as I'm thinking of it now, part of this might have been, in order to maintain that working relationship, right? It was in his benefit for us to get along. And so he often would let me know, like when there was a misstep on his part. And so I was familiar with having that sort of honest conversation with my parent where apologies were issued. And that meant everything to me. So for me to have, to apologize to my children when there's an upset, or when I make a mistake, or when I, lash out or whatever, like that comes easily because that was modeled for me. But I think beyond the apology, because an apology is one thing, but truly for me, when I think about the way that I'm engaging my children, it really is more about that long term. And so I think about, just the concept of owning our imperfections. It humanizes us. They don't know, right? They don't know what it is to be a grown up. They don't know the stresses that we have. They don't know the responsibilities that we have. All they know is, mom's going to be there at this time and this time and this time, and dinner is at that time and whatever else, right? And so to create a space that humanizes you speaking for myself, that humanizes me and allows for them to see me as someone who is flawed, but also who loves them and is willing to meet them at the, at that relational table in a certain way, writes a story for them about what they can expect from other people who say that they love them later on. And that's what's, I think, the most important part of all of that for me is I'm teaching them how loving relationships work. And so later down the road, it's not a matter of, well, I've never seen that. I don't expect my partner or my friend or whatever to apologize. Like, no, we're teaching them from early on that you can make mistakes and you can overcome them. And this is what that looks like, in a way that respects that other person as well. So that's my only added thought.
That's great. I think we have time for one last kind of topic, and it's going to be a little bit off what was on my my little rundown of lists of things to do, but it's we've talked about being a mom and being having work and stuff. How and Trisha brought up boundaries, but what is your maybe top tip or two for being present in either work or being a parent, in each situation? Like, do you have a go-to that makes you like, oh no, I've got to get back to just being mom right now, or no, someone else has, someone else in my village has the kids for a moment, and I have to really focus on work right now? Do you have top tips for that? We can start with Trisha.
Sure. So I would go back to, being comfortable asking other people for help. I know it's hard for us to do that, and, to send a text or pick up the phone. I mean, especially with kids in sports and for me in school, whether it's their teacher that I'm asking things to, or asking a neighbor. I just think we have to get comfortable that we don't have to take it on ourselves in order to do all the things that maybe we want to. For me, one of the greatest things that I love, working fully remote right now, is my 2:15 to 2:30, and that's when they come in the door. It's when the bus drops them off and they walk in. So I really try not to have something going on, but if I do, I got to have like that next 30 minutes open just so I can pop out. Because me, that's that opportunity that I can connect with them. They're super excited to be home. We have a quick chat. I mean, it can be 5 minutes, but it's just those little moments to connect. And it doesn't have to be these big, long chunks. I think when you just really focus and you are present, or sometimes it's, hey, mommy needs to get on a call, but I'm going to come out at, 5 o'clock or 4:30 and say hello to you. Keeping your word on those commitments to your kids, just like you would to your work commitments, is important, because they are relying on you. And for me, I do want to build those relationships. And early on, I absolutely had more guilt than I do now, and it's just I've built up that confidence not to have the guilt. But early on, there was absolutely things that I did feel that way. As I mentioned, I think both of my kids have been daddy's girl and daddy's boy, and that was hard for me to swallow. But through that committed time with them, my husband and I kind of laugh and talk about it, that I've come full circle with them. And that was a big goal of mine. Just like I have work goals, I had goals with my kids, and building quality relationships with each of them. I think if you can make time, and it's carving it out with each of them to find a special routine. As you shared my background, I spent a better part of my career working at McDonald's. And when my kids were little, we went to McDonald's all the time. And it's so funny, because every card that my son makes for me, on the back, he's got the arches and he has two little people sitting there, and it's him and I.
Aw.
And so we've created this routine that's what we do. And when I hear Chelsea talk about her long-term goals with her kids, that's for me what I'm hoping that is setting us up for when he's 14, when he's 16, when he's 18, doesn't want to hang out with mom. I'm hoping, this is my plan, that I can say, let's go to McDonald's, and then we'll still have that together. So, finding those little connection points with kids, whatever it is, to me is how you build those relationships and continue to see them be successful.
I just wanted to say one thing to the as they get to be teenagers. I I still spend a lot of time with my teenagers. We're still very close. But my 14-year-old was playing lacrosse last week, and super rainy game, it was soaking wet. I drove past him because it was an away game, so he had to take the bus back. And as I drove past, I was like, "Okay, bye, Jack. Good game." And he was like, "Thanks, Mom. Love you," in front of the whole team. He was like, "Love you," and I was like, "Yes."
That's awesome.
He doesn't care. He's like, "Yeah, whatever." So, yeah, you could still maintain that,
It's a
cute
big
little
win.
thing when they get big. How
Yeah.
about Chelsea? Do you have any last tips on how to do that?
Yeah, I mean, I'll go more practical because I feel like I love that. So for me, there are a couple of practical things that I definitely would share in terms of like how to allow myself space and time to be present in each of those different roles. So for me, much of that comes down to both scheduling and also sharing. So I'm in a situation where I don't have a massive network. There's a very, very limited village for my family. We don't live nearby family. We don't none of that is an option. And so I've had to, over the years, get very effective with how I manage my time. And so part of that has everything to do with how I've structured my business to support that sort of presence. So I lean very heavily into automation. Like my brick and mortar runs, like 90% of its operations are fully automated. I show up and do the designs, and then I get to go home with my kids. And that's meant everything to me. And then for those things that require for me to be present, or those things that simply can't be automated, there are two hacks that I'll share. One is block scheduling, which I absolutely love. And then the second is breaking those blocks into Pomodoros. So for me to be able to manage all of the different moving things that I have inside of my world, I schedule out my days with block scheduling. So I know that on Monday, that's my CEO day. That's where I'm behind the scenes in my business. And I'm at home with my kids, right? So during the earlier part of the days, whether it's, Monday through Friday or Monday through Thursday, we typically take Friday off of school, in the morning time up until 2:00, that's time that I am doing those things that allow for me to be flexible also with my children. And then in the afternoon, that's where I have those tasks that require me to be very present in the CEO role of my business. And just moving forward in that sort of way, from Wednesday to Thursday, I'm available to see clients at the boutique, and Wednesday through Saturday, rather, that's the case. But having those sorts of blocks so that I know when I approach X day of the week, these are the things that are my focus. It really does allow for me to be present. And then by having this running list of actual tasks that I need to tackle within each of those categories, if you will, I do those using the Pomodoro Method. So if you're not familiar with the Pomodoro Method, it's really simple. There are apps that can help you do the things, but where you work for a focused amount of time. For me, it's about 25 minutes. I work for 25 minutes and then I take a break for 5 minutes. And so that allows for me to be really present in my work, and then also take a step back and be able to check in with the kids and, hey, do we need anything? Or, what's the next thing that I can help you with? And so that's super helpful. And the final piece would be calendar things. So I am obsessed with Google Calendars. That's where I keep all of my block scheduling. That's where I keep my, my list that I'll be applying, to my Pomodoros. But also that's where I get to share what's required of me to keep everything working with those people who do have my back, right? So that's where I get to share that with my partner. I can share that calendar with a friend, and having those things easily available to other people makes it a lot easier for me as well to not feel the pressure of it's all on me. Right. And we have a rule in my house. If it's not on the Google Calendar, it does not exist to Mom. So it puts other people also on the spot. If you want X to happen, it better be on the calendar. So by kind of leveling the playing field a little bit and making space for others to also be responsible for what's their priorities, it definitely creates an environment, a working environment inside of our home that makes it possible for me to be present in the different ways that I need to be throughout the course of the day. So.
Excellent. And Sandra?
Yeah, I mean, I do a lot of what Chelsea has said. The challenge that I have, and it's an ongoing challenge, is switching the focus and presence. So I do do the schedule so I can keep everything on track. But then going from finishing the day and then spending time with the kids, and they're coming, with their stuff and this and that. And I find that the thoughts are still on like the business or the client or something. So what's really a few things that's really helped me is to, before I leave my day, I write out whatever is already in my mind. So in trying to attempt to go be present when I already know there's a million things going through my mind, and I'll put it through like in my calendar, I'll put it through in to-dos, I'll write it out. I've got a bunch of idea journals because I've got multiple business ideas on the go. So then it'll be this idea is coming, and then I'll be like, but I'm going to go try and have a conversation with my daughter, and I'm going to be thinking about that. So I'll open up that journal and I'll write, oh, this would be great to do here. So I'll write that in the whatever journal it belongs in. I'll make a note in my calendar in a client file. I will block something off. I'll add something to do. So before I just exit out of my office, I will do my best to empty out all of the things that are there anyways, because what I tried to do in the past is just kind of like go, just like, okay, it's over, just go be there. And then I wasn't there. I was there in body, but not in mind. So it's still an ongoing challenge. It's not perfect. It's, I think presence is something you learn as, you go through life anyways. And sometimes that's when I tell them that I'm like, I'm going to need some time because none of this is working. I need to go take a bath, right? So it's just, I think there's a lot of different tools and strategies, and also giving yourself a break, because transitioning and being present, to me, I found it a big challenge that I get better and better at, but it's still a challenge.
Yep, agreed. Thanks. Those are great tips, ladies. I think that brings us to our conclusion for this particular session. I'd like to thank all you three for being here with me and making this panel just amazing. You guys are all super impressive. And I just want to note to anyone who's still watching us or watching this later that there are links to anyone's social media beneath this in the session notes. So if there's anyone that you want to connect with further, you can check out their social media. And thank you guys. I'm impressed by you ladies. I feel now I have to go make some time and be present and do all these other things, but I'll write it down before I leave so that I can, have it done in my office so that I can go be present somewhere else. But thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dorothy.
Okay, take care.